Having been in the industry for so long as a Pan-African specialist guide, there are some incredible encounters that I've had the privilege of witnessing. I guess in my vintage, not having social media back in those days is probably a blessing. But one of the particular stories that I do recount often and remember with much fondness is tracking a leopard on foot one morning early. We had just begun game drive. The sun had just crested the horizon. And my very good friend and mentor, Jack Ngumani, and I saw this particular leopard that we had many encounters with. We knew her movements, her behavior very, very well. We were fortunate to understand her territory. And the tracks were that fresh. For those of you that have been on safari with me, you know I often equate that to reading the morning newspaper and catching up on what's happened the day before, much like you would do at home. This particular morning, the tracks were that fresh that just by visual, the small, crisp outlines of her back proximal pad, we could still see the tufts of hair in between those lobes and the proximal pads. And so we left our guests safely under a big marula tree in the shade, told them where we were going, in which direction, and we estimated we'd track for maybe 10, 15 minutes just to see the direction of where this beautiful leopardess was moving to, so we could then establish her location and bring the vehicle into the right position for photographics, and as well as just watching the behavior. And so we set out. Jack with his famous tracking stick, myself alongside him, and as we picked up the tracks through a small drainage riverbed line that was dry, the tracks crested, and on the other side of this drainage line was this tiny grass knoll. And the tracks then in the soft grass, Jack and I decided I would go one way around the knoll of grass and he would go the other way, and just try and establish no direction, north, east, south, or west, much like you use a GPS. And when you're tracking fresh tracks like this, yes, you're looking down at the track to identify, but you're also looking directly ahead of you to look at the signs of the trail. Where's the grass broken? Where would she have moved? Can we see maybe a urine marking, so a territorial marking on a leaf? Your senses are alive and awake. And I went right and Jack went left around this grassy knoll, which was probably no more in my memory than waist height, with thick grass. And I glanced at Jack and he was a little bit in front of where I was. And as I went around the corner, my premonition and my instinct and my training kicked in, and for some inexplicable reason, I looked directly down at where my boots were. And as I was about to put my foot down, I saw the tail, no pun intended, sign and shape and coloration of this particular leopard's tail through the grass. I don't know to this day how she managed to evade me standing on her tail, how Jack managed to stand still as he did, as so did I, as she bolted for cover from this grass. Jack and I looked at each other, and I'll never forget, he looked at me and said, "How did you see that?" And I said, "Jack, you've mentored and trained me on foot." And he said, "We better go back and tell the clients we have found her closely because you almost stepped on her tail." Happiness.